Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to this week's edition of Open Dialogue. We're talking about the issue of halal food industries, but halal in a wider context of the entertainment, where sometimes halal itself as a brand could be turned into something quite corporate. I'm particularly worried about corporate Muslims. It's a term that I've quite often coined, where we become professionals and we start turning everything in Islam to a really slick, modern version. To what extent is that possible and needed? Branding Islam in a slick, modern way to fit the PR of the time, is that necessary? Is the word halal itself a brand and a product that will eventually be taken over by corporate industries and turned into a sales tool? On the other hand, is it something that we need to keep in the dark ages and perhaps not define halal food or halal as a concept in a modern 21st century context? So I'm going to bring Maulana Musharraf back in on this, that the commodification, everything gets commodified these days. We live in a world of advertising. It's only a matter of time before the big companies realize that halal is actually something that they can make profit from. What do we as a Muslim community do to keep control or keep hold of the concept of halal?
The only thing is that positive way is to compete with them, and we've got, in a halal commodity, you need to have your Muslim culture and Muslim background for keeping that halal. Although non-Muslims are also still there in the business, they're already in the business. You've got non-Muslims who, where the Muslims, they slaughter the animals and it's halal, and they're doing the business but as overall, people prefer the practicing person to be responsible for slaughtering the animals, and because they can do it. I don't think there's any danger that it will be overtaken by others and the Muslim people will be left behind in this business or in this competition. But I think, in my opinion, it's a very positive thing. If the companies come in, they will bring in competition, and with the competition, I think the quality of food, the quality of halal, and it will rise, and I think it will be, the more awareness will come into the community and the society, general society. I'm talking about all, even the non-Muslims, they will get educated about the halal. Like the Jews, they have got the kosher food. They've brought in something, and they've introduced before halal food was introduced here. So I think the halal food will play a positive role in bringing awareness about the food.
You're agreeing on this. You're a branding man. You're part of a corporate background in a way yourself. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's great if the big supermarkets and the big companies start selling more and more halal food. They're only going to start educating the public as well about the benefits of halal food. For example, I wasn't aware that you're not allowed to halal slaughter an animal in front of other animals. So there's lots of positive messages about halal and the term halal. And I think the more awareness there is, the better the knowledge the public's going to get.
Well, I'd be totally for the idea of corporates coming in and being able to re-educate Muslims or ourselves about the depth of what halal means. Yeah, but I mean, whether they'll actually do that is going to be a different question.
For they don't do anything. They're selling, this is halal meat and this is non-halal. So people will automatically learn. They won't know what's the difference.
Yeah.
It will bring awareness in them. What's the difference between halal and not slaughter in the halal way, not slaughtered animal? So there must be some difference. So it will bring awareness. And when a question arises, people try to learn about it and eradicate that question, get answers for the question. So that will bring awareness. And
thank you, Aga. We have another caller. I just want to come back to you straight after the caller's statement or question. Assalamu alaikum.
वालेकुम सलाम my तीनों ब्रदरों को
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जनाब कैसे हैं
जी हम जी मोहम्मद अली from London yeah
nice to talk to you
Maulana Sahab you look very different tonight
he's keeping me under control today
you look very young
today I'm replacing Maulana SMS Rizvi, that's why I'm looking different.
That's very good. Your program is very nice, very interesting program, 3 topics in one, that's very good. So where I start, look at it. I learned from the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that every person should be saved from Muslim hand and the tongue. Unfortunately, this is not the case for chef. All across the world, my brother is sitting in front of me. I'm not blaming him. I'm talking about all across the world. The chef do not care about the health. they care about just only the taste. They don't give any information. For example, if my mother is pregnant, my wife pregnant, and when I go to the doctor give is very good information, for health. But the same, my mother and my daughter are pregnant. When you go to the chef, to the food shop, and the chef don't care about. He know that the woman is on the shop. She's pregnant. She has a baby. And I give the chicken tikka masala, or I give the chicken curry, this and that, that. And if suppose it's my wife, he know that himself, this is not healthy. So unfortunately, all over the world, I'm not blaming to just only one person. So inshallah, you can you can watch my program tomorrow 4 o'clock. Is Ali's Kitchens on Ahlabad TV, which is I try to give the information, the very very healthy, fully information. And try to give to my mothers and my children, all over the blood pressures, sugar memories, all over the world. People are the health conscious. That I try to give the information to put in my program. Inshallah, I think I will gonna be successful in my program. So I'm just trying to say because हमको चाहिए कि जितनी भी जो भी हमको इंफॉर्मेशन अब हमारे पास फूड में टेस्ट है, हमारे पास हलाल फूड है, जितनी भी कम्युनिटी हैं जो नॉन मुस्लिम हैं, दे वेरी वेरी अट्रैक्टेड, वो हमारे स्टॉल पे आते हैं. लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली अब हमने क्या है कि वी हैव टू बी चेंज द ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड. हमने उनको इंफॉर्मेशन देनी है, दिस इज अ हलाल फूड एंड अल्लाह सुब्हानो तआला ने इसमें क्या रखा है और हमने तुम्हारी हेल्थ के लिए इसके अंदर सेव करके जो हम तुम्हें दे रहे हैं, you close your eyes and just eat it. तो अभी जो अनफॉर्चुनेटली मैं इंडियन रेस्टोरेंट का देख रहा हूँ, they all empty in my area because the people are gone. Because when they go to the doctor straight will say, oh, don't go to the near the red meat, don't go to the chicken tikka masala, don't eat this oil, this and that, that. So now we have to be changed. Most of the important thing is a Muslim chef, that one. We have the halal food, so we are the Muslim chef, we have the task. It's a very hard work. Inshallah, we're going to be achieve. And I just, my brother, I forgot his name. What his name is?
Ajmal.
Ajmal Bhai, can you watch my program tomorrow, please?
Okay.
I know that my presenting is maybe a little bit, make you confused, but which way I trying to present my food, to the health way, that. So alhamdulillah, you will be like, that.
Yeah, I'm sure you made a great effort. Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Ajmal, your response to that?
Well, I think it's slightly a sweeping statement that all chefs care about is taste and not the health benefits. More and more in today's society, with obesity being a problem, people want to be educated about the health benefits of food. So I think going are the days where chefs could just churn out unhealthy food and the public would just swallow it up. Those days are gone now. The public are much more savvy about the health benefits of food, and the chefs are actually catering to this new market.
Well, we've got another caller on the line, but it does bring a big question. Nutrition, gluten issues, and all sorts of ulcer problems. There are so many health issues related to food which the community is ignorant about. We could argue that it's modern day food production which is causing this. We'll come on to that later. And is that halal or not halal? That's a whole different issue. Caller on the line, your statement, your question, please. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Your guest, I think, is a chef.
Yes, indeed.
As well.
Yep, indeed he is.
Now, regarding the discussion, I think it's a very depth discussion. What is halal? How do you do halal and everything? I think Maulana probably, I'm putting a question, but I think we'll expect an answer from Maulana. Now, the meat what we are eating, usually, say for instance, the chicken are on the belt, and hundreds of thousands of chicken have been slaughtered in one day. Now, if one has to do it properly, like an Islamic way, I think it is very impossible. I mean, I can't see how it can be done. Even the other animals, the goat or the cow, I mean, it has to face the Kaaba, it has to be slaughtered in certain ways and everything. Now, is it really been done in this country? I doubt it very much.
But I
stay on the line, please. We'll
I
get
asked these questions, to some people, and they said yes, they have made an arrangement to face so that they are facing Kaaba. The only difference is that previously they used to do it with knife. Now they are using some electrical cutters for that, which I think there's no problem with that. The Maraje and the ulama of higher level who would give fatwa, they have given their fatwa that it's allowed to use any other tool instead, which can do it very quickly. And thus using that, I think there is. But I would not say that everyone is 100%. We have to be very careful with that, and we need to get involved in that. The thing is, the main thing, I think the awareness of the people will play a very positive role. Like we see in the third world countries, you go to the doctor and you just enter the room and you tell him, oh, I've got this problem, he starts writing the medicine for you. But the doctor, you question, doctor, what did you say? What have you diagnosed? So when the doctor comes to know that you are aware of your rights and you are aware of something, knowledge of these things, then he will take pain and he will not try to do that. Similar is the case with the halal food. If we are careful, we ask the butcher where is the food coming from, who is doing it, and about the slaughterhouses, I think it's not very difficult these days to get information. The main slaughterhouses, everybody knows that who are slaughtering the animals and who have got a good name and who don't have a very good name in those slaughterhouses. Even the shops. If we are selecting the doctor or GP for ourselves, we go and find out who is the good GP. So similarly, we should go before buying halal food. That I think, in my personally, what I do is that I first of all look for the halal. I ask them questions. Number two, the person, he should also be dependable, that he is also good in his dealings and you can trust it. The person who is selling that halal is also trustworthy. That's one important that I take into consideration while I am buying.
Another question, Aga.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Now, as you in your last, the discussion just before about the animal, the right of animal, you discussed that the animal should be in a good health. It should be seen that the animal hasn't suffered. Now, nowadays, the chicken, they don't even see the daylight. In fact, they have been fed. It's very unhumane to even bring. It is a process of getting the chicken ready. It's really commercially, it's very profitable. But is it the right for that animal? Because that animal hasn't seen anything else but just a very quick growth for a consumption. With another animals as well, I think they do the same thing. Now, what does Islam say regarding something like that?
Islam, I'll just give you an ordinary answer, that Islam says that if you think that something is not available, it opens the venue for the business community, those who want to invest in businesses. I think it's a very good business to get investment in. And the people, the Muslim community, they should enter this business, raising up the animals, farms and all these things. That's a very good business and very profitable business that we can enter into. And organic food, no doubt, that's very good. But here I think the standards here to take about the health of the animals, I think the British standards, that's a good standard.
Can I just come in on this? There's a well-known British chef who ran a campaign in terms of highlighting battery-farmed chickens. And it was a couple of years ago. I've forgotten his name. He's a very well-known chef. He ran it on Channel 4, one of the main channels, and he had a huge success. As soon as he ran that campaign, the British audiences responded. They stopped en masse buying non-organic chickens or battery farmed chickens. Yeah. Now the first thing is that we haven't run any campaigns like this. We don't really seem to care. And this is where my problem is. That as Muslims, as people who say, look, we are the Khalifas on earth, we understand we are the vicegerents on this planet, and we are here to look after everything. Actually, not only do we not care terribly for other human rights, perhaps at times, it would seem, in fact, we kill each other. But at the same time, our concern for the environment, our concern for animal rights, we're way behind Western society in terms of the way it reacts to these things. Yeah. This is the thing I'm questioning, is that why wouldn't you see Muslims at the front of environment rights movements? Why aren't we, which is to me is a halal concept, the idea of halal, a halal environment, an environment which is preserving God's creation in a pristine state. The idea of, for instance, animal rights, which the brother has raised. These are rights issues.
I think
the much deeper issue.
Muslim community is preoccupied with too many other issues, the religious issues, the social issues, the economic issues, migration to this country, and then settling down in the society.
I think that's
not an excuse that we should do that.
It's an excuse that we can't afford to have.
I won't say that it's an excuse, but we need to come down. Now is the time that we should enter this field. You are pointing out the right thing, that we should, this is our duty. If halal thing and other things, why should other people come and they say, oh, the halal is not proper halal, the animals are not looked after. We need to have some society and some organization to look after these affairs. Everybody can't do it. Everybody can't get involved in doing that, and that's a very unorganized manner. Islam tells us about organizing ourselves, and with organizational structure, we should have some structure that we look after these things, that we should certify, like that there are different organizations certifying that properly halal animals slaughtered in Islamic way. Why not we should have organizations which should say, oh, we certify that this was a healthy animal and it was good for human consumption.
And it was well looked after.
Well looked after.
Yeah.
It was like
treated humanely.
You don't keep like cattle in a cage and it is unable to move, unable to sit down, unable to take rest. I don't think it's a very Islamic way to raise the animal in that way. Just like we are raising crops in the field, so that they are animals raised there. They should be free. And organic animals, they have got a different criteria.
Let me move on.
Yeah.
Genetically modified wheat, genetically modified products. Again, this is an area in which modern technology, modern science is starting to tamper with nature. And again, as a moral, ethical check, I know the Marja have thoughts on this. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to let you think about it and come back. We're going to raise that issue after this clip. It's again just emphasizes the points that we've been dealing with just now.
As being vicegerents on the earth, they're stewards of the earth, and we're required to take care of it, including all living things. We're responsible for animals and must treat them ultimately with respect, and they're entrusted to us. So whilst they can, the Quran allows you to use animals perhaps for work, to be beasts of burden, if you like, to travel on the land with them, you can't abuse that. So, for example, the Prophet has said, if you're traveling in a green land with lots of lush food, to go slowly so the animals can feed. But if you're in a barren land, to go quickly through that so that the animals can again go there to feed on better land elsewhere. And the companions of the Prophet, when they rode on their camels in the night, before they would have to unload the saddles and make sure the animals were fed and watered even before prayer. So even before prayer, the animal has to be taken care of and looked after. The Prophet was very keen on telling his companions to make sure that they looked after animals. One day, one of the companions was wiping down his horse very nicely, and they said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, well, the Prophet reprimanded me the day before about the way I care for my horse, so now I'm making sure I look after it." There was a prostitute. The Prophet described her life, and she gave water to a very thirsty dog. It was very hot, and she actually went and got water and gave the dog this water from her shoe. And the Prophet said, all of her sins will be forgiven. And there were some of his companions who took the eggs from a tree, and the mother bird was, really getting very agitated. And the Prophet said, return the eggs to her. You can't agitate the mother. There's so many examples, right the way through to how an animal should be slaughtered. And you might think, well, how's that for animal rights? But Islam is not a vegetarian religion. You're allowed to eat meat, but that has certain requirements. So you must therefore, the ideal is to take an animal, to make sure can see another animal in any way, to give it a meal, to give it a drink, and to then slaughter it. He forbade anybody to hold an animal, to tie it up and use it as target practice. He forbade so many things in relation to how poorly an animal should be treated. It must always be treated with dignity and respect at all times. In industrialized society, where animals are part of the food chain and things are so mass-produced, it's incredibly important to think not just how an animal dies, but how it lived. Organic, free-range meat, which is what you have to search for ultimately to make sure that the animal had the best quality of life. But also in the production of eggs, for example, millions upon millions, 20 million chickens are held in battery farms across this country every year on an area of a cage no bigger than an A4 piece of paper. They can't move its wings, its beak is clipped so it doesn't peck itself. The conditions are so overheated, it increases the size of its comb and its wattles, and it lives a very miserable life until ultimately at aged 18 months they're called spent hens and they're killed for cat food. We keep chickens, make sure that our eggs are ultimately free range, that our eggs are not part of the battery industry. And we also rescue battery hens, so at the stage of 18 months, when they're for industrial purposes, they're considered spent, we carry on getting lovely fresh eggs from them. As editor of Amel, the Muslim Lifestyle magazine, we make sure that we're constantly covering issues that make Muslims realise that they're often part of the problem, but they can be part of the solution in relation to how we treat animals in the modern day. And we want to show how we can bring practical tips and examples to bring alive to the 21st century the Prophet's exhortations about how we should treat animals.
There we are, the attitudes of Muslims to animals. That's a whole different topic altogether, isn't it? But quite clearly from the sayings that were quoted in that particular film, there's a huge amount of evidence of the Prophet's love for animals, the Prophet's care, and the Prophet's humanity. And yet, when we talk about the reverence for the Holy Prophet, this is also part of the actions. The actions we talk about often are salah and zakat and all those things that we're aware of. But to what extent are these actions actual actions which are part of the Sunnah? Of course they're part of the Sunnah, but why do we play them down? Why is it, I'm going to come on to you as well in a minute, Ajmal, on this issue, but why is it that Muslims selectively pick what it is that we want to highlight as Sunnah and other things that we want to sort of put in the back door and our culture takes over?
I think most of the problems that Islam we are facing is a lack of awareness, Awareness needs to be raised. And I would say that the programs on the media that are coming up, I think that they are raising the level of awareness. Previously, nobody used to answer why, and nobody used to question Maulana about why is it like that, how it is like that. But now Islam is being highlighted around the globe, so the level of the questions are also raising. People are asking why, what, how. What does Islam say? And people do a research with everything available. Most of the informations about Islam are available on the internet. So
and when you go to the actual sources, the Prophet's an environmentalist, the Prophet's an animal rights activist, he's a humanitarian, he's somebody who's against war for the sake of it. And yet when it comes to Muslims, and a lot of our dear Takfiri brothers probably would argue with me to say that they don't particularly, they are good people, but when you're beheading people and doing zabah of human beings these days, it seems that some Muslims are very far from this. I've got a caller on the line, I'm going to hold them. Ajmal, you haven't had a word. Can you afford to go organic and halal in the total way and make a profit?
The answer is yes, but it's all driven by the consumer. The end consumer is the ultimate decision maker. Is a consumer willing to pay an extra 20-30% premium to have pure organic food? Or even halal food for that matter. So it's driven by the consumer.
So it's us, the people. We need to change our habits. Yep. We need to change our attitudes towards what we're willing to pay for or not pay for. We should be able to pay more.
I would like to add one point, because we see in Pakistan, for example, they call it desi chicken. Desi chicken is an organic.
Or veleti chicken.
And people go for the desi one. Here also people go for desi one, but it's not confirmed that it's a desi, really organic. But people like organic and they want to spend extra money also.
So you say hope.
I think if Brother Ajmal takes a step and move forward, we're doing the istikhara and then jump into it, inshallah, it's a very profitable business. And now the thing is that new thing in these days, you get into a new business, you change something and people don't gain from it, or business goes down. Already people are in, financially a recession sort of a thing. Yeah. So they don't want to take risks at this time.
Okay. A little response and then the caller is waiting.
Yeah, I still stick to, I think it's consumer driven, and I think if the demand is there from the consumer, the industry would respond.
Okay. Yes, your question or your statement. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for waiting.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I just wanted to make a comment. I think we are slightly digressing away from the topic, and a lot of emphasis is put on meat and focus on animals. But what we're lacking here is the essential element that's required as part of our spiritual well-being is to have a balanced diet. And, you know, emphasizing the focus on what the Quran says, eat of those good things which we have provided to you, eat of which is lawful and wholesome on the earth. And obviously the importance of having a nutritious diet needs to be emphasized, not just focusing entirely on eating meat, lamb, chicken, whatever. You know, I think we slightly need to digress away, and it would have been also useful to kind of have someone maybe from the medical field, a nutritionist, because these are the people who are actual experts in their own field. So I think for the future, it's important that, you know, you kind of take that on board. And also the habits of eating excessively is absolutely kind of discouraged in Islam, where we kind of hear these things that the stomach is the home of ill health and is usually responsible in some way to causing an ill health in an individual. So one of the things that I just wanted to kind of get the panel's view was a lot of the Japanese kind of have a very long lifespan. And is that because of the type of diet they actually eat? Is it because they have a lot of emphasis on fish? We're not really emphasizing the other, availability of the fish or the different aspects in terms of nutrition. So it's just a question to the panel in terms of if you guys have got any views about it.
Well, I think it's a great point that the nutrition thing was touched on earlier, but we didn't expand it, and that's a timely intervention to maybe focus on this. But I actually started the program even more broadly. It was more to do with like our ethical values. See, the concept of halal, as far as I can see, is actually touching fundamentally on your ethics, on goodness. On what is good in your society. So halal is not just about the food, although we focused on food, and now we're focusing on nutrition and animal welfare and environment. You see how quickly the concept of halal spreads into virtually every arena of life. You know, halal actions, halal behavior, halal. You see, if you use that word halal, firstly, the definition is terribly important, Agha.
Yeah.
And people's definition may be too limited quite often. So the broader definition of halal, what would you say on that issue?
Halal means, halal doesn't mean that you keep on eating meat only and you just chicken and also. And there are hadiths which tell us that do eat meat, but don't make your stomach a graveyard of animals, that you are morning, daytime, evening, all the time you're eating meat. It's permissible. But, you know, the people, why are Muslim more inclined towards having meat? I think there are 2-3 factors. Number one, easy to cook instead of vegetables. When you are cooking vegetables, they take more time cleaning them, and that take more time, and it's easily accessible. And rather than the vegetables, you go for the fresh vegetables. You will have to search a lot for them. And number 3, most of the food that we have vegetables, they are what I would say that sort of genetically modified, and that too many chemicals used. So I think that is one of the reasons. I don't say that that's the only reason. There are some reasons that people go for chicken. You just take out the chicken and you just want to cook it. It will be ready in about 1 hour, half an hour. It will be ready to serve your guests. But you can't do that with the vegetables. You have to be very time precisely. You have to watch the time exactly. Chicken, a little bit over, a little bit less cooked, it will do good, but not with vegetables. You can't do that. Take that risk with the vegetables.
Ajmal, you've got this issue. This issue has been raised about nutrition, and clearly it's a really valid point. But and of course, balance, mizan, seems to be a big word in the life of a Muslim. Yet again, balance. For every individual, what is the balance for people within the dietary sector? These days, it's often so difficult for people to know, even if they've got professionals. You go to a nutritionist. It's one of the worst areas of medical science, it seems to me, even in the West. The knowledge of the stomach and knowledge of what's okay, what's not okay, what balance is right for every individual, because each individual has a different kind of genetic makeup and a propensity for perhaps what's the word, allergies,
Yeah.
nut allergies, this allergy, that allergy. These days, gluten allergies have popped up, which are abound.
Different
How do
people
we
have got different
how do we deal with
concentration of different things and needs and requirement for different things. You need to go for the nutrition for that, and then you will need to keep a balance in your body. You know, everybody's
I
body.
think Islam sets out some very clear guidelines. For example, you need to have a mixture of food, so it should be fruits, vegetables, and meat, and then seasonal food. And then one of the key things about what you eat, your stomach should be 1/3 empty, 1/3 fluid, and 1/3 food, and that allows for really good digestion. You know, and it provides with the optimum amount of energy. So there's some basic things in Islam that are really valuable. And I think maybe back in those days, they didn't have all these nutritional charts and values and all that. So I think sometimes there's a value in having some really basic information and sticking to the basics.
Well, I think I'm going to bring it back to what I think was probably at the core of why I was doing this program. It wasn't really necessarily about entertainment, halal or Sharia. It was to say, actually, what are the ethics surrounding the word halal? You see, at the core, when you deconstruct what Islam is as a Sharia, it's an ethical code. It's an ethical code of conduct. Ultimately, we've interpreted it quite often as just a bunch of ablutions or rituals. In reality, Sharia
Islam is a way of life.
Yeah, it's a way of life. It cuts into the core.
Every side of our life is, Islam has something to tell us.
So I think using the concept of halal was to say, look, we only think of it as zaba, but actually, as the viewers have started to mention, it's a vast subject. Once you touch that subject, it means you've got to analyze in your own life every aspect of your life and actually do a little spot check of yourselves. And halal haram is when you do a spot check on every aspect, then you're really asking the ethical question, am I living ethically? Am I living a good life according to a God-given code? And that's what Sharia is. And often now Sharia is being used as a way of judging other people, as a way of confining people, or making people follow a certain
now people are getting mature. I think people are coming out of it. And in this transactional period, when the people are getting involved about the religion, they want to question the religion, they want to ask questions, they want to get knowledge. The awareness is increasing among the people. I think we are going through a transactional period where the people are getting involved in the religion.
So let's carry on with this, with Sharia, the Sharia, because we haven't touched that bit of this in the program. But Sharia is not, let's define Sharia.
Yeah.
Sharia is an evolving man-made interpretation of Quran, yes? Agreed?
No, it's not like.
Okay.
It's
Give
not
me a definition.
Sharia
Give me your
are the
definition.
Islamic laws, like medicine. Doctor is not making the laws of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into the medicine field and he brings out those laws and rules and regulations to implement them in the society. Sharia and the ulama, what they do, the Islamic laws are there, fundamental laws. From them, according to today's time, they take out the laws and how to implement them today. And how, like you said, the nutrition of a person, the personal chemistry, everybody has got his own chemistry. And you need to have nutrition according to him. So in our life, for example, here in the West, we have got different things to implement in different ways. Similarly, in Asia, for Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, these areas, and then the regions in the Middle East, you need to implement different things in different ways. So that's the Sharia laws. They are general. Now, how to implement them, you can take and you can understand how I should, like halal food. For example, in Pakistan, everybody's doing the same, and everybody knows how to slaughter an animal, so that's not a problem. In an Islamic country, that's not a problem. You don't need to go and ask the shop, oh, is it halal or not? Because definitely it's halal. But here, because a slaughtered animal, you have got other options too. So here you need to question, you need to confirm that it's a halal food. So here the Sharia steps in. But the thing is that previously what used to happen, that people used to give Sharia and that was okay. Now, because of the coming in of the business community, the halal food and all these things have become a booming business also. And it's very attractive for making money, That's why the people are coming in. So now Sharia needs to be safeguarded. There's Sharia laws to be taken care of. And what you were pointing out, that the people, they are not taking care of the proper zabiha, the Islamic way of slaughtering animals. That's because they're just interested in numbers. And
I would argue, Aga, that it is against Sharia to not look after the animals properly.
Yeah.
But our concentration constantly, I mean, that's why I use that example.
Well, it's commercial pressures. I mean, these slaughterhouses, I mean, I'm sure most of them do, but do they really care about following every letter of the law? Or are they more interested in being a commercial enterprise and making a profit? And I think that's where, this is a great debate about the halal. I've heard more debate about halal in the last year than I have in the last 10 years. So this is a great thing. And I think the industry could do with a bit more scrutiny and regulation. Not legislation, but just self-regulation, I think would be good. Because the food we eat, is it truly halal? I mean, that's a big question. It's being imported from all over the world. The only assurance we have is a sticker in the box. You know,
there's halal food.
Yeah.
There's haram food sold as halal food, and there's mixed food sold as halal food.
Yeah.
These three are available in the market. You know, halal food, proper halal food, which is 100% halal, which you get a very small amount of. Then because you see so much consumption, and you go and see this halal slaughterhouses, they're not in the same proportion.
Okay, let me ask a straight question. If I go to any one of these chicken and chip shops, and I buy chicken and I eat, which I do, and which everybody does, we all go, is it halal or haram? I'm not asking about zabiyah. If I ask the guy, has this been slit properly, and that's my definition of halal or haram, then he will say it's halal, alhamdulillah. But if I ask him by the definition of, was that animal kept well before it had the zabi, I should really be asking that question, shouldn't I?
I tell you one thing, that if the animal is not kept properly, it doesn't make it haram. It won't. You know, there's limitation. Yeah, Islam says that it should be kept halal. You should give water to the animal. Our Sharia, according to the Ahlul Bayt school of thought, the animal should get water before it's slaughtered. But if you don't give water to the animal, that doesn't mean that slaughter is wrong. It's not haram. It doesn't become haram with that. There are limitations, but it's permissible. It's said that you should do this. It's recommended, highly recommended that you should do the facing Qibla. That's one of the main issues, that you should be facing Qibla when you are doing the slaughtering the animal.
Okay.
But the thing is,
this is really interesting. It's getting really interesting. But let me, and you've answered the question, but I'm going to take it a little further. So is it important to us that the zimma is essentially, what's the fundamental thing about that? It is that we are doing it in the name of God. We are sacrificing the animal in the name of God. That's the fundamental.
What do you mean in the name of God? Let me ask you a question.
Well, I'm going to say, in the name of God.
Well, I'll tell you, doing it. I'll leave it here. I will tell you, all the animals, they belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Allah said, you ask me permission, and you consider that I have granted you permission. Once you have got chicken at your home and I slaughter it with your permission, Mohsin, you say, Malana, if you come, any chicken you take, you are allowed. Just tell me that you have slaughtered one animal, one chicken or two. That's okay. Allah has done the same thing. When we say in the name of Allah, that means we are taking permission from Allah. And if we are not taking the name of Allah, we are stealing those chicken. So stolen chicken is the one which we are we are killing that. We are eating that without permission from Allah.
I'm bringing sunnah into it now. That the Prophet, according to a lot of these hadiths that we've said, the sunnah is saying very clearly that the Prophet would not have been terribly happy for us to be going and halalifying chickens which were not really well looked after, and yet we are comfortably ignoring those battery chickens which have no knees, they're dying in God knows what and not treated well, and somehow it's okay for us to say that's halal as long as it's got the name of God and we've done it in the name of God.
Because the ulama, they describe that what order is to what extent and how it's to be implemented. We leave it to them. So if you're not slaughtered it, it's breathing, it's alive, and you slaughter it, you haven't done against the Sharia.
You yourself
but if it died, this one you can implement. But if it died, then you cut its throat and you put it among what you have done. This is haram now. You have sold haram something. Okay. So this is again, you won't be sinful. As I gave an example of a person who is forced to drink. You know, you are not sinful, but it will affect you, your soul, your body, your prayers, your du'as. Like brother with the caller who said that Imam Ali he was giving, and it's not a fiction story; it's a reality.
Can I come in on this again? if I'm willing to accept that ruling, which I am, because ultimately the Marja know what they're talking about, and
Because
I will
you're on
accept
there,
it.
yeah?
I will accept it, but I'm having an interesting time dissecting something, which is the process in which Sharia is often implemented. And in a modern era, we're going to be dissected by non-Muslims, particularly on these issues, and we're going to be called cruel Muslims because we're not treating animals correctly. So I'm dealing with this from that perspective of an outsider looking at the way we make our decisions. Okay, now. To me, I find it very uncomfortable to say that I will ignore a humanitarian thing which the Prophet said is very, very important, a humanitarian issue. I.e., as a human being, I have a duty to look after an animal. Yet I ignore it. I ignore that fundamental root issue. I'm not trying to deal with the problem at the root, but I'm saying it's okay, I'm going to worry about the problem further down the line, whether it's being zabah properly or not. But I'm not worried about the fundamental issue of the rights of the animal.
No. What I was saying is that it will not make you haram. But if in the farm, people are keeping animals and they're cruel to them, Islam does interfere. But where the Islam is there as a system, where Islam is not as a system, you can't interfere. Here, the main problem lies here that in the farms,
we're not in control of the
this
system.
Process. Where is Sharia? Who is the one who is to define that it's according to Sharia laws? Nobody, because the business people, they've interfered, so they just bring one Muslim guy who is slaughtering the animal according to Islam, and he's just selling them. So Sharia is not playing its role in that society, in that process. You know,
Great.
Sharia needs to be brought in.
That's what I wanted to get to.
Into the process.
In a way, we're throwing the word Sharia around.
Yeah.
We're legitimizing it, but actually, the kind of people that are legitimizing it are kind of incompetent potentially. Many of them.
Yeah,
and they don't go to the root of the real essence of what the thing is.
They're considering the weight of the animals they're slaughtering and the numbers of the chicken they're slaughtering and selling into the market. They're not concerned about the laws of Sharia being. So there lies the point that if Sharia steps in, Sharia will tell that the animals have to be looked after.
Yes. And if I were to say that with genetic modification, or if I was to say that with looking after the environment, this is what I'm trying to reach. That Sharia actually goes for root causes of problems.
Yeah.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Holy Quran goes for root causes of problems. It doesn't tickle around with symptoms. And the thing is, in this day and age, the thing that we need to educate ourselves, I feel, a little bit more, in a modern Western society, we need to educate ourselves more about those root causes and where the Prophet, peace be upon him, was so far ahead of everybody in terms of the lead on whether it was women's rights or animal welfare or human rights or disarmament or peace.
Enemies' rights.
Yes.
Enemies' rights.
I mean,
prisoners' rights.
This is where I think Muslims, we as Muslims, are not doing justice to the Quran. We're not doing justice to the Prophet, peace be upon him, because what we're doing is often when we just limit to Sharia in the way that we're doing it, we say, okay, it's the symptoms. We're okay. We're going to do it. We're going to do a rough job at this point, but let's forget the original essence.
I'll just make one point that we have adopted Islam as a religion, as an individual. We need to adopt Islam as a system of life. When we adopt it as a system of life, then Islam will start playing these roles. And before that, for example, there is a community. In our community, we need to do that. We need to implement Islam as a system and adopt Islam as a system of life. Once we do that, these problems are going to end. This is because we have confined Islam only to some ritual. Like a Muslim means a person who is praying, who is having beard, who is having certain rituals. That's okay with Islam. But Islam as a system of life, where my likings, dislikings, my behavior, my attitude, my friendship, my enmity, everything is according to the rules and regulations of Islam. That will bring an Islamic society. There you don't need to go and judge everyone and check everyone that he said what type of food he's selling, how the animal is being kept. Any law of the world, of the universe, cannot force you to do the right thing.
You can break it.
Only the love of Allah, love of your religion is a leverage which forces you and brings you to submit. One who has submitted to Allah, he will not do wrong even if nobody is watching him.
Well, thank you. I'm going to bring you in.
That's where I think we need to have more scrutiny. I think it's a very good point you're raising. Downstream at the start of the life cycle, are we following the rules? We can't be sure about that. Are the animals being treated correctly? We can't be sure about that. And there are a number of halal monitoring type organisations that have sprung up. I think there's too many of them, frankly. There needs to be one overarching halal organisation that
You see,
supervise.
Ajmal, I'm coming. Let me round.
Those organizations should also be monitored.
Yeah.
They also need monitoring.
Let me round it. Let me broaden it out again, because again, I don't want to limit it to slaughter, because what I was driving at with the program, the intention of the program, was to explore what does halal mean in the wider context. And when we say, okay, I'm going to marry my daughter to such and such a person, and she gets no say in it, that's a cultural issue, and it may be something you want to do as a cultural thing. The root of that problem is injustice, a potential for injustice. And is it halal for you to take actions which suit you personally, but actually they're unjust potentially? That questioning, what my problem is with the community, if we're going to say we're Muslims and we're submitters to the divine rules, are we honest? Are we in an honest transaction with ourselves? Do we question ourselves at the root cause of most of the decisions that we make? We make decisions based on our whim, on our desire, and we sometimes use Shariah to prop them up and support them, and in our minds we say they're okay. But actually, when you look at the fundamental breakdown of whether it's actually ethical, right, or something good, or balanced, or wholesome, or even valid within Quranic or Sunnah terms, you'll find a lot of our daily behavior, daily actions, daily customs, daily rituals are actually completely against Sharia.
I would say that in our life, we've got a circle of culture, we've got a circle of religion. A portion overlaps. There's some cultural things which are also part of our religion, but there's a big part of our culture which is not part of our religion. And this cultural side is of two types. One, which is not in confrontation with the religion. We can accept that culture as a culture, not as a religion. It should be accepted. But those part of the culture which is anti-religion, we need to put that aside. We don't need to follow that. But this thing, in reality, Imam Ali says that the religion which is taken from hearsay, just a breeze will take away that religion from you. And the religion which is based on logic and rationality, mountains can leave their place, that religion will not leave the place. The thing is that now people, this country, the Western country, the positive thing about it, this country, these people, they accept logic and rationality. And Islam's rationality and logic, and the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt's logic and rationality has got a very great potential to be accepted as a way of life. Because with rationality, you can convince others. Islam, in our school of thought, is spread only by convincing. And that can be done only if you give that a rational background, you give it through logic and rationality rules. No, you just say that, oh, Allah said this and the Prophet said this. And I don't think that the people in the colleges and universities who have gone through that, they will accept, yes, you tell that this is rational, this is logical, and the Prophet also said this, and Allah is also saying the same thing. Everybody is going to accept.
In this society, that's exactly what I wanted to come to. Now, to lighten the mood, we've got really quite hot under the collar here, because I think I wanted to raise Maulana's game to come clean on this issue, and I just was been playing a side role, the role of a sort
That's
of
why you wanted me to come in uniform, yeah?
Absolutely. I wanted your authority today. We're going to show you a little clip to lighten the mood back to actually how great Muslims are at bringing halal food into the West. And let's celebrate that, and all the heavy issues are there. But on the surface, also we are bringing a lot of joy to the West with our food and with our entrepreneurial skills. Here's a little clip
and
to
with
demonstrate.
our culture also.
And our culture also.
नियाग्रा फॉल्स को दुनिया भर में उसकी खूबसूरती की वजह से पहचाना जाता है। इसीलिए रात उतरने के साथ ही इन फॉल्स की खूबसूरती नुमाया करने के लिए रोशनियों का खास एहतमाम किया गया है। नियाग्रा फॉल्स की मुनासबत से इस शहर को अमेरिका और कनाडा दोनों तरफ नियाग्रा फॉल्स शहर का नाम दिया गया है। अमेरिकी नियाग्रा फॉल्स शहर रात को बहुत पुरसकून दिखाई देता है, और अगर रात में इस शहर की सैर के दौरान आपकी नजर हलाल फूड ट्रक पर पड़ जाए तो क्या ही बात है।
लास्ट वाला जो है कौन सा 10 क्या है वो? नंबर 10 वो सीख कबाब है।
मिलिए नासिर भट्ट साहब से, जिनका ताल्लुक पाकिस्तान के शहर रावलपिंडी से है और जिन्होंने नियाग्रा फॉल्स और अमेरिकी बॉर्डर से चंद कदम के फासले पर एक फूड ट्रक खोला। ये फूड ट्रक शहर में हलाल खानों का वाहिद मरकज है।
एक दफ़ा मैंने विज़िट किया यहाँ, तो मेरी सिस्टर भी मेरे साथ थी, तो हम लोग बहुत कोशिश कर रहे थे कि भाई कहीं से हलाल खाना मिल जाए। 2 दिन हम यहाँ रहे, लेकिन किसी के पास हमें हलाल फूड नहीं मिला। तो उस टाइम पे मेरे जहन में आया कि क्यों ना मैं आके छोटा सा कोई बिज़नेस यहाँ शुरू कर लूँ, कि काफ़ी विजिटर आते हैं, काफ़ी मुसलमान आते हैं।
आज इनके खाने की धूम इस छोटे से शहर के कोने कोने में फैल चुकी है।
अभी ये सामने मेरे इमिग्रेशन है यूएस की, तकरीबन 13-14 जो उनके ऑफिसर हैं वो मेरे से ही खाना लेके जाते हैं। स्टेट पुलिस है, वो सारे मेरे से खाना लेके जाते हैं, यहाँ से खाते हैं। जो ना एक दफ़ा जो खाना खा लेता है वो 2-3 आदमी साथ और लेके आ जाते हैं।
फैज ने कहा था कि तुझसे भी दिल फरेब हैं गम रोजगार के। नासिर भट्ट कहते हैं कि पिछले 11 सालों में उन्हें नियाग्रा फॉल्स जाने का मौका सिर्फ 2 दफा ही मिल सका।
जब से मैं आया हूँ 11 साल में 2 दफ़ा फॉल के ऊपर गया हूँ। एक दफ़ा जब पहले विजिट किया और एक दफ़ा ये लास्ट ईयर में मैं गया हूँ। वो भी मेरे कुछ दोस्त आए हुए थे, उनको लेके गया।
यूएस से बॉर्डर के बिल्कुल साथ और नियाग्रा फॉल्स से बिल्कुल पीछे छोटे से पाकिस्तानी ढाबे में आपको हलाल खाना तो मिलेगा ही, लेकिन अगर आपकी मुलाकात इसके मालिक नासिर भट्ट साहब से हो तो आप ये महसूस किए बगैर नहीं रह सकेंगे कि रेस्टोरेंट तो उन्होंने यहाँ खोला हुआ है, लेकिन दिल उनका पाकिस्तान में ही धड़कता है।
And that just goes to prove that Pakistanis can make halalify even the Niagara Falls. The halal revolution is spreading across the world. How we manage it, I'm going to let you have your final comment on this, and Ajmal yourself as well.
With all those that program that we said, whatever we said, the thing is that food is a mean. It's not the aim and objective. It's mean to gain energy, mean to gain spirituality, and mean to gain power and energy to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pray, fast, and everything. Food should not be made the aim and objective of life. We should eat to live, not live to eat only. That, I think, will summarize everything what I wanted to say.
That's very succinct. For Aghay Musharraf, who's a sea of words, he's done very well there. Ajmal, your final word on this.
Halal food, I think the debate has just started, and I think the penetration of halal food in the Western society has just started as well. Because we see more and more national restaurant chains selling halal food, and it seems to be more and more common. I think this is just a start, which is great news for all Muslims in the UK. Because the day will come, hopefully, when we can go into any restaurant and enjoy halal food.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it. We've had a really heated debate, and rightly so. Halal, entertainment, and Shariah. An odd mix of titles, but we've tried to group it in. You can never keep these conversations within a limit, and we've never done absolute justice to them. But it gives you food for thought, and that's the purpose of these programs, is to throw in angles which hopefully one person or another will find interesting, and to take them to your communities, and to actually take them to your butchers, take them into your young people, and to think about things with more depth. Not just to take for granted words like halal or even jihad. These words need defining. They need defining in our own minds, they need defining to others, and we need to have a really detailed definition. And I think Agha has done a fantastic job in keeping us reined in and falling foul of it. And have a lovely journey back to Glasgow. Good luck with your business, Ajmal.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you again in future programs to join us. Maybe come in and do some live cooking for us.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and Khud Hafiz.